All right, we're back here in the Rock Cave for Song of the Day. How are we all doing today? Everyone recovered yet again from another wacky Wednesday? Hope you all enjoyed that. Today is Thursday, May 14th. And today, Ian Astbury is 58 years old. Who's that, you might say? You might want to know who that is. Ian Astbury is the founding member and lead singer of the band The Cult. How many of you have heard of The Cult? The thing about The Cult is you may not have ever heard them if there wasn't satellite radio. If you listen to First Wave, you'll hear them a lot. Even if you go back earlier, maybe on MTV 120 Minutes, I don't know where they were played, but I don't know that they were played on the radio anywhere. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The Cult, a band out of England, first called Southern Death Cult, and that name didn't really go over well for a while. So then they just changed their name to Death Cult, and same issue. They were slated to be on a British. One of those British music shows where you perform, so they changed their name to just The Cult right before they went on that show. They ended up having a fair amount of hits in the 80s. They had a couple albums out at first. Their third album was produced by Rick Rubin. I mean, we're going to talk about Rick Rubin a lot, I think. If you really look at him, he's pretty much brilliant. Gets people to turn their careers around or make changes or do things totally different, even when the record company doesn't want them to. So he's an interesting guy. But basically, throughout the 80s, they had hits Firewoman, Fire, Love Removal Machine, Little Devil, Rain, and She Sells Sanctuary. These are all great songs. I don't even know if I heard them until the mid 90s probably. I don't think I'd ever heard any Cult songs before, so I'm late to the party, and maybe some of you are too. Let's talk about the band just a little bit. So my song of the day is going to be She Sells Sanctuary, and that's the one you're probably going to recognize. That was on their album. That was their last album with their founding drummer. And what was their drummer's name? I mean, a drummer's name can only be one thing, right? His name was Nigel Preston. So he must have just exploded into green globules and they had to replace him. Another interesting story about Ian is that he says that in '79 he became obsessed with the song The End by The Doors when he saw Apocalypse Now. And I can relate to that. I haven't told the story yet. Maybe we'll touch on it another time. But there was a brief time, one summer, where I became a little obsessed with the movie Apocalypse Now. And specifically with that version of The End, because I actually bought the soundtrack, a 2 CD soundtrack for that, specifically for that song. Because they have that song, if you all know that song, but they added the sounds of helicopters in it, which is really cool effect. So I can relate to that. In the early 90s, Ian was approached by Oliver Stone and was asked if he wanted to play Jim Morrison in his movie The Doors. And he turned it down because he said he didn't really care for the way that they had portrayed him. So obviously, if you remember, that role went to Val Kilmer. I saw that movie in the theater, and then I went through a time at that point where I was really into The Doors because that really introduced me to a lot of their music for the first time. I had just known some of their radio hits, but in the early 90s when I saw that movie, I started listening to The Doors big time. The Cult would go on to make a few records. They would break up, get back together, break up, get back together. That would go on for a couple of decades. He did in 2002. He actually joined a band with the surviving members of The Doors, Robbie Krieger and Ray Manzarek, called The Doors of the 21st Century. So he got to sing Doors songs for a living, so that was probably pretty cool. And that's pretty much it about The Cult. I like this band. I know there's a few out there who know who they are. We'll keep it short today, so make sure we don't go on for too long. If you don't know this song, check it out. If you haven't heard it in a while, check it out. If you like this song, just turn it up because, it's pretty good for a Thursday, kind of roll into the weekend. So for today, we're doing the Cult, She Sells Sanctuary. That's your song of the day. Enjoy, and we'll see you on the flip side.